Hi everybody, Dana here again with more Tuesday tips for leaders of volunteers. And this week we are doing part 2 Tuesday tips on volunteer safety, and April is Global Volunteering Month, so hopefully you're celebrating that safely as well. Part 1 had some general safety policy procedure guideline tips, and part 2 today we're going into a specific topic that is very complex and has very complex solutions. And for that, since Tuesday tips are short little videos that just kind of get your attention, scratch the surface, offer a few key ideas, I have linked to many more articles and resources to combat hate speech, and targeted violence in your own communities wherever you are around the world. And if you are with an organization that is on the front lines of combating hate and on the front lines of social justice, civil rights, human rights, and you have some additional resources, please share those with links in the comments below. But these tips are really for organizations that aren't typically doing something controversial or targeted by hateful rhetoric or bigotry or bias, but the level of hate speech and stochastic terrorism and violence, and particularly in the United States, gun violence is up and up and up. Unfortunately, hates mean clicks, so the algorithms across a lot of social media and platforms that we use as people are not really helping, because they're all set on a profit model to get people riled up against each other and to kind of echo chamber people into their more harmful and hateful belief systems. Now, that is well above your and my pay grade to solve, but the results of that are going to be felt very strongly, and are among healthcare groups, just anyone kind of going about doing their normal mission or cause or volunteer activities, and someone is perceived to be from a group that is under attack, whether that's LGBTIA, whether that's based on sexuality or gender or skin color or ethnic background or language you speak. Those are on the rise, and it's not something that can be ignored. And there are a lot of tools in the community toolbox to address hate when it comes to your organization or one of your team members, especially a volunteer, is targeted. So I'm going to have some quotes from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is an anti-hate group here in the United States, and again, links to lots of other things for Europe and Australia and other resources. But here's a quote from Southern Poverty Law Center. "Bias is a human condition, and American history is rife with prejudice against groups and individuals because of their race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or other characteristics. And as a nation, we've sometimes made progress, and lately that's progress has been erased or been backsliding. So we want to avoid stereotyping, and unfortunately unequal treatment does still persist in those stereotypes. So when bias motivates an unlawful act, it is considered a hate crime. So bias, harassment could be verbal, but it's not breaking a big law, or it's not yet an act of violence. But bias motivates an unlawful act, that's when it's considered a hate crime. And most hate crimes are inspired by race and religion, but hate today wears many faces, unfortunately. And bias incidents, which are eruptions of hate where no crime is committed, also can tear communities apart and escalate into actual crime. So it's quite harmful. It definitely interferes with quality of life and interferes with the mission of your agency when these attacks and campaigns are located or targeted against your team members. So this comes from not just the news today, but a very recent example in a webinar that I did with some colleagues for the Barrel Institute on Jedi, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And one of the participants mentioned that they're in a hospital in Texas that has had a lot of threats of violence against individual doctors or the hospital because they're offering healthcare to everybody who needs healthcare, and that includes queer people, that includes trans people, that includes people of different races, and it includes women exercising bodily autonomy and agency. And so there's been, in specific areas, not just that, calling it out, an increase in this. And so going over that person's example that they chose to share, we came up with some solutions in the webinar to help them and guided that person and others who are interested in more resources. So I thought I'd share some of those resources today. So again, there's really 10 things you can do in thinking about a response or action to counter hate. And one is to act. So not just have meetings about it, but what is a plan, whether that's an action plan or changing volunteer activities or hiring security or having volunteers step up to help protect an activity or an individual person who's been targeted or been harassed. And we've seen a great amount of volunteers and community members, formally and informally, stepping up to protect when there's been targeted hate against Asians, against the LGBTQIA plus community, of which I am a part, and any other groups, Muslim groups being attacked specifically, things like that. So there can be a great community response and unity in taking action. And to that end, for the second tip, join forces. What other communities or community groups or groups that you can partner with or learn from or with who are already really good at this kind of work of countering this hate and having a united, more interconnected group or coalition or alliance can do a lot to stand up to the face of hate. Support the victims. Understand, listen, believe people. If they say they feel that they're being harassed for who they are inherently, for an inherent characteristic, if they're part of a protected class. Fun fact, jerk is not a protected class, but for everybody else, that understand and accept that this is a problem that it is up to your team or perhaps your entire agency to help solve. And this problem doesn't just go away with thoughts and prayers or a couple of clicks online that you like a certain post that you agree with. Like, that doesn't actually solve the problem in your organization or on your team to help everyone on the team, including whatever clients, customers, members of the public, volunteers, donors, to feel safe and that they belong with your organization. And to that effect of believing the victim, speak up yourself as an individual if you can, speak up for your agency. Again, depending on where you are in the world, government agencies can have more limitations on what campaigning or things you can do with the agency or on your own time. So look into that. But for most nonprofits, we're talking about in a general way or just going about your day-to-day mission and cause, speak up and join with anti-hate coalitions or interfaith communities or whatever already aligns with your mission, where people are doing this kind of work effectively, and learn from each other. And educate yourself. So of course, there's been a huge boon to Jedi webinars like the one I just did for Beryl last month, or other DEI or IDEA topics, webinars, trainings, working that into your strategic plan. But very often individual biases can hang us up in that work. So kind of, understand yourself, understand what biases might be in the systems in your organization, and just kind of committing to doing that work in the long term can help you learn about when incidents like this flare up and how to handle it. And then create an alternative. So if a group is targeting your organization because there's, a member of a protected class that this hateful group is against, or you're doing more and more work in social justice or something else that some group got fired up for clicks about and is coming after you, then understand that there can be, again, community coalitions of protection, of pushback against this hateful rhetoric. And really, you have to change hearts and minds before you change behavior. So you can create either alternative activities for the immediate safety of volunteers or your mission or your team, if that's necessary. Hopefully that isn't, but like literally create alternative things for people to do if it's become too dangerous or difficult to accomplish your core goal. Just temporarily do that. But really we're talking about creating an alternative in the community to people feeling like they're going to want to join a hate group. And again, this is deeper work and there's more resources linked below. And then pressure leaders. Sometimes the bigotry and the bias is very often coming from inside the organization. And if you're getting feedback in a DEI process or going through harassment suits or anything like that, then yeah, that is a problem that absolutely has to be solved by pressuring the leaders or board in both of your organization, but also leaders in the community. If there is not a response in community safety to hateful acts, if some law enforcement or political leaders are compliant or encouraging some of this violence targeted against protected classes and protected groups, then speak out about it, again, either as an individual or start to make that part of your values and policy of your organization to help stand up for those groups against hate. And stay engaged. So there's going to be waves and political pendulums are going to swing back and forth over the course of weeks or months or years, but stay on top of it and stay engaged. And this can also be something that you bring in or create a special project team of engineers around engineers and volunteers around diversity, equity, inclusion. There might be a committee that's looking into that, and be willing to take the feedback about the organization and the problems or biases or bigotries that it has when you're trying to hopefully evolve and update your policies and your practices and your responsiveness to if there's a targeted attack against anyone in your organization on your team for who they inherently are. And teach acceptance, love thy neighbor, the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. There's a lot of variations in religions and beliefs and philosophies that boil down to don't be a jerk. No core religion has a belief system of we automatically hate these other people. These are very human biases and behaviors that are learned, that are taught, that are enforced, especially nowadays when clicks mean more money for organizations and they may not care about being neutral, or they may not even care, or they may want to side with an oppressive group or hateful group because that's turning out to be more profitable for them. And that's unfortunate, but that's kind of the state that we're in right now. And dig deeper. Be willing to commit to disrupting hate and intolerance at home, at school, in the workplace, in your faith communities. Acceptance fundamentally is a personal decision, and it comes from an attitude that is learnable and embraceable, and a belief that every voice matters, that all people are valuable, and that no one is inherently less than. And you know what? We all grew up with prejudices and biases, and it's a constant personal or professional work in progress to undo all of those layers. It's never going to be perfect, but keep acknowledging them and working through them. And that can be a scary and difficult process individually or as a team or as an organization. But it's also one of the most important steps towards breaking down the walls of silence that allow intolerance to grow. So luckily, we all possess the power to overcome our ignorance and our fear and to influence our children, our peers, and our community. So again, many, many more resources on this linked in the video description below. And please add your resources or insights if you've had to deal with a situation like this with your team or your organization or you personally. So again, I hope you do have a safe and fun week and rest of Global Volunteering Month. More Tuesday tips coming next week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.